Hi there guys, this is Mohammad Fazlani. I'm a data engineer by profession, and in this channel I'll be talking about the essential technologies that every data engineer must master to excel in this field. Now before we go into more detail, let's kick things off with the basics and understand what is data engineering. For me, I always picture data engineering as a journey from left to right. On the left, you have vast majority of data sources, and we communicate with these data sources through different communication protocols. We use API, ODBC, OLTP, and sometimes even use web scraping to extract the data from these sources. So once we extract the data, this data cannot be used as it is. In today's world, your data is like your gold, and you need to refine it to process its values, which is why we create different data pipelines. We use powerful ETL tools like Talent or Azure Data Factory, or sometimes we even harness the power of programming languages like Python and SQL to prepare, transform, and clean our data. Once our data is organized and transformed, we put it into the data warehouse, and that's where we use it for different analytical purposes. We also use it for machine learning and also create different models. This is why data engineering is very critical, because businesses make their decisions based on this data. So now that we know the basics of data engineering and why is it critical, let's go in more detail and understand about those top 6 technologies that you need to master if you want to excel in this field. If you go into the Google and search for all the data engineering technologies and tools available out there, you will find so many tools, and honestly this might be very overwhelming or confusing to start with. But if you're looking for a break to enter into the data engineering field, then this video is for you. Because in this video I'll be talking about the top 6 technologies that you need to master if you want to be proficient in this field. Now in the end of this video, I will also share one useful resource that will help you in this journey. So are you ready? Let's get started. Number 1 technology that you need to be proficient in are your computer science fundamentals. So you need to improve your computer science fundamentals. That includes many programming languages like Python, SQL, and Linux. I know that there are a lot of other programming languages available out there like Java, C#, PHP, but these days companies are mainly looking for the data engineers who are proficient in only these 3 languages. Now, why these languages are important? Because if you think about Python, this is widely used to do the data transformation. We use it for the ETL pipeline. So you need to familiarize yourself with some of the basic concepts like what are data frames, data structures, conditional statements, loops, variables. These are the building blocks that you need to be aware of, that you need to understand before we dive into any further. And there are tons of resources available on YouTube and Udemy that you can go over to master in this field. Second that you need to learn is the SQL, which is one of my favorite. SQL stands for Structure Query Language. Now we know that your databases are your central repository where your data resides. Now you need a programming language to interact, query, and manipulate this data. So this is where the SQL comes in. You need to familiarize yourself with the fundamental operations. There are some basic statements that you need to know, like DDL, data definition language, data manipulation language, data control language, data query language, transaction control language. Not only those, but you also need to understand about the execution, like when you write a SQL statement, what should be the execution flow, like your from keyword will be executed, then joining, then where, then group by, then in having. These kind of the basics and fundamentals are very important. Now number 3 technology, which is really important, are your Linux command and scripting. It will greatly enhance your ability to interact with your cloud data infrastructures. These 3 programming languages are very important, and guys, I cannot emphasize more enough on these, because if anybody wants to enter into the data engineering field, then these 3 programming languages are must to start with. So after you improve your computer science fundamentals, the second technology that you need to improve are your data modeling skills. Data modeling is a process that we use to analyze and define the data requirements which are needed to support a business process. Now for any database to work with, if it's a new project, the first thing that we need to do is we need to discuss with the business, we need to discuss with subject matter experts about what is the end goal, what is it that we want to use our data for. Based on the end goals, we need to model our data. We need to understand what are our entities and how these entities will be connected together. We need to put it into the graphical representation. I will be creating a separate section on the whole data modeling series where we will dive into deeper, and then we will understand about what are the different types of the relationships, like subtypes, recursive, non-recursive, identifying, non-identifying, dimension modeling, some of the normalization techniques. But this is very important, and the only reason I mentioned it after improving your programming skills like SQL is because if your SQL is not strong and your data models are poorly designed, then businesses may not be able to run the right queries, which is why after you learn your SQL, it is very important to improve your data modeling skills. After you know enough about the SQL and data modeling, number third technology that you need to be proficient in is the use of the data warehouses. Data warehouse is like a central repository where the data from all the different systems is integrated together. Now let's imagine you are working in a company where you have data from all these different systems. So you simply cannot run the queries on all these systems all together. This is where we build an ETL process. ETL stands for extract, transform and load, where you extract the data from all these different sources. You do data transformation, cleaning, preparation, aggregation, and once your data is transformed, you load it into the data warehouse. And this is where the business will extract the value from the data, and you will be able to run some queries like what was the total number of the sales or what was the revenue generated last year. Now to master data warehouses, you need to do two things. One is you need to improve your fundamentals. So when we talk about the fundamental, you need to understand what is the difference between an OLTP and OLAP systems, what is an ETL process, what is an ELT process, things like what is the dimension modeling, what is the difference between the dimension and fact tables, what are slowly changing dimensions. These are some of the basic concepts that you need to know or that you need to be aware of before you dive into more details into the data warehouses. And there is also a book available in the market, which is the Data Warehousing Toolkit by Kimball. Personally, I have read some chapters of this book, and I really encourage you to go over this as well, as this will really help you to improve some of your concepts. Now after you improve the fundamentals, the next thing that you should be learning about is you should practice what you learn. And you can pick any modern data warehouse like Redshift from AWS, BigQuery from GCP, or you can pick SynapseSQL from Azure. You don't have to pick all three, you can pick any one and just practice what you have learned. Personally, I will suggest you to pick any one modern in-demand data warehouse, which is your Snowflake, because these days companies are mainly looking for data engineers who are more experienced with Snowflake. And I will also be creating separate hands-on tutorials on the data warehouses basic and also on the Snowflake, which will not only help you understanding about the data warehouses, but you can use those resources to also gain some certifications like Snowflake Snow Pro certification. So do hit subscribe button if you haven't so far, as that will keep you updated as soon as any new content is uploaded. Now the fourth technology that you need to be proficient is the data processing layer. So we know that we have so many other data sources where you store the data in the different formats. You have relational database, you have like non-relational databases. All the data is in the different structure, and that's why we build the data pipelines where we do the processing and then we load the data into the destination. Now the data processing that we were talking about, we do the data processing either by hosting or creating the data pipelines in some powerful ETL tools like Azure Data Factory, or we do some coding programming like in Python and the SQL to do the data transformation. Now this data transformation or data processing that we do is generally happen in two different ways. There is batch data streaming, which means that you take chunk of data, you process it, and then you schedule the job to run once or twice a day. Second is the real-time data streaming processes, which means that the data, you will get the data in real time, you will be processing in real time, and then you will be loading it into the destination. So it will be like processing the data as it moves forward. Now one tool for learning both batch and real-time data streaming is Apache Spark. There are a lot of tools available out there in the market, but before jumping into the tool, just like any other technology we learn, we should really understand the architecture of Apache Spark and things like what are the APIs supported or what are the functions available there. Once we get a strong solid understanding of Apache Spark, we can pick a tool like Databricks. We can use Apache Spark with the Databricks, and the language that we will be using over there will be PySpark, which is the combination of Python and Spark. So I will also be presenting some hands-on tutorials on the Databricks, where we'll be talking in detail about how you can write your Spark code, how you can improve your queries. These contents will also help you to get some certifications like Databricks Certified Data Engineer Associate and Databricks Certified Associate Developer for PySpark 3.0, as I'm certified in both of these certifications. So I will also be sharing my experience with you. If we talk about the real-time streaming data pipelines, there are many tools available in the market. There is AWS Kinesis, there is Azure IoT Hub, but I'll suggest you to use Apache Kafka. Kafka is an event streaming platform that we use to build real-time streaming data pipelines. Number fifth technology that you need to be proficient or you need to work on is the data orchestration platform. platform, because all the things that we discussed before, if you take an example of an ELT activity where you extract the data from the different data sources, you do the data processing, and then you load the data into the destination. So all these operations needs to happen in an exactly same order, which is why you need a proper workflow management tool, an orchestration tool like an Apache Airflow, using which you will orchestrate your data pipelines. Now, number 6 technology that you want to be proficient is the use of the cloud platform. So if you're working on a data engineering project and you are doing for your development purposes, then yes, you can build the data pipelines on your machine. But if you are working for an organization, then no, you cannot do these projects on your machine. You need to do these projects on a virtual machines, which are either on the company's on-premises network or on the cloud. That's why it's very important to understand how these cloud platforms work. As you may have already know, there are 3 main cloud providers available in the market. There is GCP, there is AWS, there is Azure. There are many more, but these are the well-known cloud platforms, and it really doesn't matter which cloud platform you work on. Once you work on one platform, and if you have to move to another platform, there will be a small learning curve until you get familiar with those technologies, but the fundamental principles will remain same. Also, in addition to the virtual machines, you also need to understand what are the different sets of the tools and technologies available on these cloud platform for your data engineering work. For example, like what are the different types of the databases available there? Does it have a data lake? Does it have a data warehouse? How to set up and configure the data warehouse? How do you set up the data governance and data security? What are the different type of the frameworks, processing frameworks available there where you can build your data pipelines? What are the different ETL tools available there? How do you run the SQL types of queries over your structured and unstructured data in the data lake? So these are some of the basic questions and are really important when you think about building these data pipelines for your organization on these cloud platforms. Now that we know top 6 technologies that you need to learn to master in the data engineering field, there are also some of the tools that comes under the DevOps, which I also think are very important that you need to cover if you want to become a successful data engineer. For example, how to push your code to the GitHub or GitLab, how to set up a CI/CD pipelines, how to write the unit test, integration test, how to create a Docker image of your data pipeline. So these are some of the things that you also need to be aware of so that you can follow the best practices when it comes to deploying your code in a production environment. Now, if you master all these tools and technologies that I mentioned in this tutorial, you can call yourself a data engineer. And beside that, there are also some set of the other modern stack tools which are available out there. I will not attach myself to these tools because these tools comes and goes, but it is very important to at least get a familiarity of what these tools are doing. If you really liked my content so far, please do mention in the comments what motivated you to become the data engineer so that everyone can feel motivated. Now, I do have plans to launch these courses in future on all these different topics. So please hit like and subscribe my channel if you want to stay updated with all the new content. Okay, so as we come closer, if you remember the promise that I made in the beginning of the video that I will be sharing a resource, here is the book on the fundamental of the data engineering. This is one of the books that you will not only benefit from, but you will truly enjoy as you embark on this journey and get a better understanding of the data engineering field.